This is the board meeting on KTRS.
But Dorian Johnson was at least there. This woman was clearly...
9:10 here, Big 550 KTRS. Well, when you're arguing off the air, chances are it's probably a pretty good topic to start on the air with. Joining us for the last board meeting of 2014, ladies and gentlemen, that is Jane Dueker, political consultant, or should we say recovering political consultant, attorney, and former Chief of Staff to Governor Holden, Jane Dueker.
Good morning.
Editor of the Riverfront Times, Mr. Chad Garrison. Chad, good morning.
Morning.
And by the next time we meet, he will be Speaker of the House, John Diehl Jr. Good morning, John Diehl.
Good morning.
Jane, we'll start with you. Lots has been talked about with witness number 40. Explain to people who witness number 40 is and why it's such a big deal.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who question the fact that a certain witness was called into the grand jury in the Darren Wilson, Michael Brown case. And witness number 40, who's been completely discredited. It appears she has like severe mental problems. She had a made-up journal that had some awful racist comments, and I mean, it was way out there.
And she really only came forward after some of the leaked stuff came out, and then
admitted that she sort of got stuff off the internet, and I think she was actually discredited in front of the grand jury. And so I think there's a lot of complaints that, why would you even bring this woman in, because she supported Darren Wilson, but she was completely discredited. Why would you bring her in? And I think, I understand that people have some frustration about that. However, I think if, Bob McCullough had, started saying that there were people who said they saw the incident and he didn't bring them in, there would be a huge amount of uproar. There's going to be Monday morning quarterbacking no matter what. And, a lot of the witnesses were discredited. I mean, Dorian Johnson, who was, Michael Brown's, the person with him that day.
Right.
Much of his story was completely discredited by the grand jury and by himself. And
by the facts. By the
forensic evidence.
By the forensic evidence.
By forensic evidence, by other witnesses. And so, witness testimony is... it's difficult no matter what. And I think, and I also think the way that this was presented, where they were sort of bringing people in as the investigation was going, because people were demanding quickness and they were demanding now and they were demanding. So I think that leads to, okay, we're going to put it all in, which is what he said he was going to do.
Chad?
Well, yes. I mean, it's problematic in the way that McCullough went about this, and he was going to bring everyone in. But this woman testified in front of the grand jury twice. I mean, they brought her back once she came up with her
new stuff,
bogus journal. I mean, and
which was, way out there.
And I don't understand why they would ever have this woman. I mean, I don't understand why they didn't vet people. Dorian Johnson, yeah, there were holes in his testimony, but he was there. This woman, they should have known from the get-go, was clearly never there. Had no reason testifying in front of the grand jury.
But didn't they bring her back to discredit her? I mean, wasn't that part of the point, was to, they basically figured it out.
And holes in Darren.
I'm sorry, John. There were other witnesses who were brought in who said they were there, who then changed their story. Yes. So it wasn't just Dorian Johnson. And while you certainly want to bring in Dorian Johnson because
40.
He was there,
right?
But this witness 40 wasn't there. There are others who's completely discredited, who were on quote unquote Michael Brown's side. So the question is, why do you bring in these people and then discredit them in front of the grand jury? That's a question over him saying, I'm going to bring in everybody, and I'm going to let the other 12 people decide.
Well, I think that's what happened. Is early on in the process, McCullough made a statement that we're going to send this to the grand jury, and I'm going to present all evidence I have to them and release all that evidence, or ask to have all that evidence released once the trial's over. So when you do that, I guess you probably have people come up and say, here's evidence. But I tend to agree. I think there needs to be a grand jury that's in a perfect world. I think there probably needs to be some vetting, but once again, in this case, because of the visibility of it, if there was vetting of evidence,
there would have been a lot of criticism.
But the point is, all of a sudden, I said I saw it, and I said hands up, and they didn't call me. You could just see that story coming.
Or how about, come on, no one has more holes in their story than Dorian Johnson, saying that he saw him being shot in the back as he was running away, and the forensic evidence show there's no shots in the back.
And the gun didn't go off.
So I think it's pretty clear Dorian Johnson was lying.
Right. Absolutely.
from day one.
Right.
To protect his friend, and so you knew he was lying too. But
But you're gonna call him. He was there. I mean, even if you
know he's lying,
even you blow holes in his story. But I mean, this woman was clearly
and I think
never
that's why
there.
they brought her back, though. They
And there are
figured
other people.
out she wasn't there.
But let
Right.
me. How about this? How
And then
about
she was
this crazy idea? Since the grand jury heard from witnesses who were discredited in favor of Michael Brown, here's a witness who was discredited in favor of the officer. So in a sense, it's like, okay, we showed you some people who were lying about Michael Brown. Now we're going to show you people who were lying about Officer Wilson to make it more fair.
Well,
is that a ridiculous thing to say?
Well, no, but what I find ironic too is
Yes.
that this is that you think that
Yes.
this woman was such a great witness for Darren Wilson when she said some of the most abhorrent racist remarks.
Right.
I mean, how is that helping Darren Wilson? And that's why I think that this is sort of blown out of proportion because she's, to come out and she's the Journal, and I remember when the evidence first came out, a lot of people put out on social media that Journal entry because it was
So ridiculous.
just way out wacko horrible. And so to think that was, going to be helpful to Darren Wilson, I disagree whether, she was even helpful to him.
But then this dragged on, the process. You can fault McCullough on a lot of things, but this dragged on for 3 months. And so how much time did the grand jury waste? How long did people, wait around, for this grand jury while people are providing this bogus testimony?
Well, he's got it done at least twice as fast as Eric Holder's getting the
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Right.
As slow as Bob McCullough's, how slow is Eric Holder?
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to keep in mind what the purpose of the grand jury, the Darren Wilson was the accused. Okay, so this grand jury was whether or not there was sufficient evidence to bring forward charges against Darren Wilson. Okay, and you can't go back, I think, after 3 months of testimony and say, well, only if this person, where I doubt the grand jury reached its decision based upon the testimony of witness
40,
40,
witness
who was
10,
brought
witness
back
5.
and
Yeah,
discredited.
it's the
Right.
totality of it all.
It's a portrait, okay? And each of these witnesses are color within the portrait. You don't make a portrait with one color.
On a side note, they came back and said that they're not going to bring any charges against Mr. Sansone for the for the new heating and
crime
cooling
lab.
contract.
Right.
Why don't they go to a trial on that? Why do they have this sort of investigation saying no wrongdoing occurred? Isn't that very similar to what the grand jury said?
Well, I mean, and that's the whole thing with the criminal justice system. I mean, there's no absolutes either way. I mean, which is one of the Rams players, I forget, Britt.
Yeah, Kenny Britt.
He was cleared by a grand
He
jury.
was cleared by a grand jury.
I think a lot of people would say, well, that was if he really didn't do anything, that's a fair way to do it because then you're not out there charging somebody and falsely accusing people. So the grand jury in and of itself is not bad. And so I think to say absolutes on either side is a mistake. And, you elect people to have discretion. Everybody can play Monday morning quarterback. I guarantee you have 80 different lawyers. Try that case, you're going to have 80 different cases. And, but I would rather have an error on having too much in than not enough and having people accuse him of withholding.
Chad, last word.
Well, I think where you do have agreement among pretty much most attorneys, at least the ones I've spoken to, is that this thing wasn't going to, had you even pressed ahead with charges, it was going to lose a trial.
Right.
And so, where do you cut it off, at the grand jury or at the trial? Because either way, it's not a
it'll
winning
be interesting
case.
to see how history treats this and say, because if it had gone to trial and iffy, and most people agree that, we would end up in the same place, would the 2 years of turmoil over that trial have been better for this community or not better?
Well, now we sit and wait for Eric Holder to make some type of judgment. What is he waiting for? I mean, now the attention turns to him. There's no more information to be gotten. There's no more
Presumably.
information to be extracted. What's he waiting for? So, all right. That's Jane Dueker. That's John Diehl. That's Chad Garrison. Riverfront Times. We'll come back more in a moment. 9:20 here. Big